started. Good morning. I want to thank you for coming. Thank you all for coming this morning. We planned the weather to be bad so that you didn't have an alternative.
Normal, not bad.
My name is Yoram Bauman. I am here before you this morning as the world's first and only stand-up economist. It's a niche market. I really only have one thing going for me as a stand-up economist, and that's low expectations. Actually, that's not true. I have one other thing going for me as a stand-up economist. I get to make fun of macroeconomists. You know that I'm a real economist because I can make fun of sub-disciplines that are totally indistinguishable to people on the outside. You know, people in Washington make fun of people in Oregon, people in Alabama make fun of people in Mississippi, people in prison make fun of people in graduate school. Some of you laugh because you've been there. Graduate school, I mean. I did go through 5 years of graduate school, got my PhD in economics, only to decide that I wanted to do stand-up comedy. You can imagine how much this thrilled my father. He told me I'd never make it as a stand-up economist, and I said, why not? And he said, there's no demand. I said, don't worry, Dad, I'm a supply side economist. I just stand up and let the jokes trickle down. I believe in the Laffer curve. Tough crowd. You can also tell that I'm a real economist because I can translate plain English into incomprehensible gibberish. But briefly, while I was in graduate school, I had the opposite ability. I could translate economic gibberish into plain English, and that's where this bit I want to do for you comes from. So this is Mankew's Principles of Economics. This is what got me into comedy. So for those of you who don't know, Greg Mankew, a Harvard professor, wrote one of the best-selling textbooks in economics, and it's based on these 10 principles. There they are. I know the font is small, but I generally just tell people not to bother reading these. Just take my word that you pretty much need a PhD in economics to understand these principles. Fortunately, I have one. So I've taken it upon myself to translate these principles for the more fortunate. We're going to begin by separating them into the first 7 principles, which are microeconomics, and the last 3, which are macroeconomics. The difference, of course, being that microeconomists are wrong about specific things. All right, stay with me, people. And macroeconomists are wrong about things in general.
Right.
We're going to begin with the macro principles 8, 9, and 10. Now, believe it or not, these all have the exact same translation, namely blah, blah, blah. Now, as proof, I need only remind you that macroeconomists have successfully predicted 9 out of the last 5 recessions. And as further proof, we can now go up 1 font size. Let's go back to the micro principles. Now, the first one, people face trade-offs. This one is easy. Translation choices are bad. This is a simple syllogism, right? Trade-offs are bad. Anytime you have choices, you have trade-offs. Therefore, choices have to be bad. If you don't understand that, take a look at the second principle. The cost of something is what you give up to get it. Translation choices are really bad. I have a simple little demonstration of this fact. Let's say that someone offers you a Snickers bar that you value at $1. Okay, what you can loosely think of as your economic profit in this situation is $1 of the Snickers bar minus the cost of what you give up to get it, which is nothing. Your economic profit is $1. Now, to begin to understand why choices are bad, imagine that someone offers you a choice between the Snickers bar that you value at $1 and some M&Ms that you value at 70 cents. Okay, now your economic profit is only 30 cents. You begin to understand why choices are bad. The worst possible situation, in fact, is being offered a choice between a Snickers bar and an identical Snickers bar. Because then your economic profit is 0. Now most people would say, you know, there's no difference between being offered 1 or 2 Snickers bars or just being offered 1 Snickers bar. But that kind of sloppy thinking will never get you a tenure track position. Simplifying. Choices are bad. Choices are really bad. I'm not going to beat around the bush with you folks. If you don't understand why choices are bad, you're probably stupid. Moving Moving on, principle number 3, rational people think at the margin. Translation, people are stupid. Now, it is immediately obvious that people do not think at the margin. Nobody goes to the grocery store and says, I'm going to buy an orange, I'm going to buy another orange, I'm going to buy another orange. That joke only makes sense to econ majors. People don't think like that. Right, but if people don't think at the margin, and if, as Mankiw says, rational people do think at the margin, we are led to a most unhappy conclusion. People are not rational. People, in other words, are stupid. But before you despair for humanity, take a look at the next principle. People respond to incentives. Now, the dictionary says that incentive is a noun. That means something that influences to action, synonym motive. So when Mankiw says that people respond to incentives, what he's saying is that people are motivated by motives. You might think this is a bit like saying that tautologies are tautological, right? I mean, people would have to be pretty stupid to be unmotivated by motives. But remember principle 3. People are stupid. Hence, we need principle 4 to tell us that people aren't that stupid. Simplifying again, move on to every economist's favorite topic, free trade. Principle 5, trade can make everyone better off. Translation, trade can make everyone worse off. You may wonder how the translation of principle 5 is the opposite of the principle itself. I have a simple proof of this fact that will blow your mind. I want you to compare two statements. One of them is trade can make everyone better off. And the other one is trade will make everyone better off. Now, if you had to pick one of those two statements to put in your best-selling economics textbook, right, it's no contest. The second statement is clearly better. But Mankiw uses the first statement instead. And if you think about why, there's only one possible explanation. The second statement has got to be wrong. In other words, trade can make some people worse off, and from there it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to trade can make everyone worse off. I figured some of you would have some questions about this, so I added a footnote with some details. Eat your heart out. Now that we've cleared that up, I want you to see the last two principles. Markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. Translation, governments are stupid. And governments can sometimes improve market outcomes. Governments aren't that stupid. They follow immediately from principle 5 in its translation. Okay, if trade can make everyone better off, what do we need government for? Just let people trade. Right? But if trade can make everyone worse off, we better have a government around to stop people from trading. So there are the 10 principles of economics translated. So I put this up on YouTube and on my website a couple of years ago, not thinking very much of it. And I'm embarrassed to say that it's heading towards 1 million hits on YouTube. Which is a lot for economics jokes. Not a lot for videos about, like, puppies. But it's a lot for economics jokes. And many of those hits are because the video was posted on Greg Mankiw's blog. It turns out that he's a fan of my parody. Either that or else he comes from the school of there's no such thing as bad publicity. In fact, I got to perform in his class at Harvard. It was the last leg of my 2008 Supply Side World Tour. Which was mostly a trip to Israel with my father. But as long as I was there, I did some comedy, and then I stopped off in Cambridge on my way back. And Greg originally wasn't going to tell his students. He just said there was a surprise guest who was coming to class. He wasn't going to tell them that it was me. But then he had to tell them that it was me because some students came to his office hours and said that there was a rumor going around the Harvard campus that Ben Bernanke was coming to class. I like to think they got the better end of the deal.